My name is Rachel. I am 38 years old. I work at Chase Bank. I am the branch manager in a small town in the United States. I have worked here for almost 12 years. Every morning, I wake up early, dress neatly, and reach the bank before everyone else. I open the door, turn on the lights, and check the cash reports. I walk around the office and greet my team. They smile and say good morning. They respect me. I respect them too. I always say, a good manager is also a good listener. My office is small but quiet. There is a large window behind my chair. I can see the street from there. Every day, I see people walking past. Some walk fast, some slow, some look tired, and some look worried. Many of them come inside. They sit across my desk. They ask for one thing: money. In a bank, money is not a gift. It is a loan. And a loan is a chain. Once you take it, you carry it until the end. I have seen people break under that weight. I have seen marriages fall apart. I have seen small business owners lose everything. That is why I always say the same thing first. Are you sure you need this loan? Some people look confused when I ask. Some think I do not want to help. But I do. I want to help them not fall. I want them to think twice before they sign a paper that will tie them down for years. A man once came to me crying. He had lost his job and couldn't pay his car loan. He said, "You gave me this loan. Now I am drowning." I didn't want to be that reason again. But not everyone listens. Some nod politely, thank me for the advice, and still sign the forms. Some get angry. "It's my life," they say. "Just do your job." I never argue. I just do what is required. But I do it with a heavy heart. One morning, a young woman came to my office. She was maybe 25. Her name was Jasmine. She wore a red jacket and held a folder in her hand. She looked nervous. I offered her a chair. She smiled weakly and sat down. She said she wanted a loan to start a small bakery. I asked, "Do you have experience?" She shook her head. "I just bake at home." I asked, "Do you have a business plan?" She said she wrote something last night. Her hands were shaking. I looked at the folder. It had numbers that didn't add up. Rent was too low, sales were too high, and there were no costs for electricity, insurance, or slow months. I closed the folder and looked at her gently. I said, "I think you have a good dream, but I don't think this is the right time." She looked down. Her eyes became red. She said, "Everyone said no. You were my last hope." My heart sank. I didn't want to hurt her, but I didn't want to lie. "You need more time," I said. "You need to plan better. Learn more. Work in a bakery first. Save some money. Then come back." She didn't speak for a while. Then she stood up. She whispered, "Thank you," and walked away. I watched her from my window. She walked slowly, shoulders down. I sighed. Maybe she hated me, but maybe one day she would understand. 2 days later, a different case came. An old man, maybe 70, came in with his son. The son did all the talking. He said they needed money for a new truck. The man would drive it. They had no job yet, but something would come. I looked at the man. His hands were shaking. His eyes were tired. I asked, "Do you want this, sir?" The son said yes again. But I asked the old man directly. He looked at me, then at his son. "If it helps him," he said quietly, "I will drive." I knew the truth. He didn't want the loan. He didn't want the truck. He just didn't want to say no to his son. I gave a small smile and said, "Let me think about it." They left. I didn't approve the loan. Some of my staff do not understand me. One of the new tellers once asked, "Why do you push people away? Isn't our job to give loans?" I smiled and said, "Our job is to protect people's money. Sometimes that means protecting them from taking too much." She looked confused. I didn't blame her. It took me years to learn that truth. My own sister once took a big loan. She wanted to open a clothes shop. She thought it would be easy. She bought too much stock. She hired too many workers. After 1 year, she had nothing left. I told her not to do it, but she didn't listen. We don't talk much now. She says I made her feel small. I was only trying to help. That pain stays with me. One afternoon, my boss called from the city office. He asked, "Why are your loan approvals low this quarter?" I said, "Because most of them were not ready." He didn't like that answer. He wanted numbers. He wanted profit. I hung up the phone feeling cold. I knew I was walking a line, but I couldn't change who I was. Later that week, Jasmine came back. Her face looked different. She smiled more. She said she got a part-time job at a bakery in town. She said she was learning fast. She brought a new plan. It looked better. Not perfect, but better. I looked at her and said, "Come back in 6 months." She said, "I will." That evening, I sat alone in my office. The lights were low. I looked around the room. The chairs were empty. The air was quiet. I thought about all the people who had come to me. The hopeful ones. The desperate ones. The angry ones. I wanted to help them all. But help is not always a yes. Sometimes help is a wait. I opened my drawer and pulled out a photo. It was of my father. He was a banker too. He used to say, "Money can solve problems, but it can also start them." I smiled. I was my father's daughter. Before I share the rest of my story, I need to know, where are you listening from? Knowing someone hears me, understands me, gives me strength. One cold Monday morning, the bank was busy. People came in with coats and gloves. Some came to deposit checks. Others waited to ask questions. A few came for loans. I sat in my office and watched them through the glass. I could tell from their eyes who was hopeful, who was tired, and who was hiding fear. Around 11 o'clock, my assistant knocked on the door. She said, "There's a man who wants to speak to you. He says it's urgent." I told her to send him in. A man walked in wearing a dark suit. His hair was neat, but his hands were shaking. He looked around 40 years old. He sat down slowly and held a small piece of paper. "My name is Victor. he said. I need a loan. I need $10,000. Please, I asked. What is it for? He took a deep breath. I want to pay my medical bills. I had surgery last month. I have 2 more treatments to go. I don't have insurance. I'm working, but it's not enough. I looked at him carefully. He was not lying. His voice was soft, but his eyes were full of fear. He showed me his hospital documents. Everything seemed real. I asked him about his job, his income, his rent. He answered with calm honesty, but I knew. Even with a loan, his life would be hard. Very hard. Victor, I said gently, I believe you. But this loan may not help. It may hurt. If you can't pay it back, it will follow you. It will make things worse. He looked down. I understand, he said. But if I don't get this treatment, I might not be here in a year. That sentence stayed in the air like a heavy cloud. I said nothing for a long moment. Then I asked, Do you have family? He shook his head. Only a brother. He's in another state. He looked tired. He had fought alone for too long. I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes. I told him to wait while I checked something. I walked to the back office. I called a local charity. They sometimes helped with medical needs. I asked if they could meet him. They said yes. I walked back into my office and said, There's someone I want you to talk to. They may help. Please trust me. He blinked. Then he nodded. I didn't give him a loan, but I gave him a chance. Later that week, I heard the charity paid part of his bill. He came back to say thank you. His hands still shook. But now, they also held hope. Not every day had stories like that. Some days were quiet. Others were full of pressure. The bank had targets. I had meetings. There were complaints. One man got angry because I didn't approve his credit card. He said, You're just sitting there, judging people. I wanted to say, I'm trying to protect you, but I stayed quiet. He walked out, slamming the door. That evening, I stayed late. The bank was empty. Outside, the streetlights came on. I sat at my desk with my head resting on my hands. I wondered, am I doing the right thing? What if I'm wrong? What if I should just say yes like everyone else? Just then, my phone buzzed. A message from Jasmine. She had written, Hi, Rachel. I just wanted to say thank you. I've learned so much. I'm still saving, still working, and still baking. I smiled. It was a small message, but it gave me strength. I closed my eyes and breathed deeply. The next month, something unusual happened. A man came in wearing a bright blue jacket. He smiled at everyone. He shook hands with my assistant. He had a big laugh. People looked at him with curiosity. He walked into my office without knocking. Hello, Miss Bank Manager, he said. I looked up, surprised. Can I help you? I asked. He sat down, still smiling. My name is Dennis. I run a car dealership. Small one. I need a loan to grow my business. More cars, more staff, more sales. Pulled up his records. He had taken loans before. Some paid on time, some not. His credit was not clean. I said, "Your last loan was late by 6 months." He nodded. "Yes, I had a rough year. But I'm back on track. You can trust me." I stayed calm. "I need to see your plan. Not just words. Numbers. Proof." He pulled out a large folder. It was full of notes, price lists, contracts, and pictures. Some things looked good. Others made no sense. I told him I needed more time to review. Dennis visited 3 more times. Each time, he brought more documents. But something always felt off. His energy was too high. His answers too quick. I called a contact at another bank. They said Dennis owed them money too. I decided to say no. When I told him, he stood up and laughed. "You'll regret it," he said. "One day you'll see me on TV, making millions." I smiled politely. "Maybe. But today is not that day." Some of my staff started calling me the gatekeeper. They said it as a joke, but I knew they meant it with respect too. I trained the new employees to listen before they speak, to ask why before how much. We didn't give money. We gave trust. That was our strength. One morning, a woman came in pushing a stroller. She was young, maybe 22. Her baby was sleeping. She wanted a small loan for a sewing machine. She wanted to work from home. She showed me pictures of dresses she made by hand. They were beautiful, simple, but full of care. I asked her how much she made from her orders. She said not much, but enough for baby food and diapers. She said her husband left a year ago. She didn't complain. She just looked tired. I gave her advice. I said, "Save a little more, keep sewing, build a small group of customers first." She looked at me and said, "No one ever gives advice at a bank. They just give bills." I smiled. "Well, I'm not like everyone." She smiled back. "I can see that." That day, I didn't feel like a banker. I felt like a teacher, a mother, a friend. I walked out of the office and looked at the people waiting, young and old, rich and poor. Some dressed well. Some wore old coats. But all had one thing in common. They wanted someone to listen. And so I kept listening, not just to their words, but to their fears, their dreams, their silent hopes. That was my job. That was my purpose. It was a Friday morning when everything changed. I was sitting at my desk, reading emails. The sun came through the window. It was a quiet day. A few people waited in the lobby. I thought it would be a normal end to the week. Then I got a call. It was from the district office. A woman named Marlene wanted to speak to me. She was part of the risk team. She asked about my loan approvals. She said my branch was behind targets again. "You're one of our best managers," she said, "but your loan numbers are too low." I didn't say anything at first. Then I said, "Because I turn away people who are not ready. I do what's right, not what's fast." Marlene paused. Then she said, "We're sending someone next week to observe your branch. It's just a review. Nothing personal." But I knew what that meant. Someone would come to watch how I work. They would sit quietly. They would take notes. And they would judge everything I do. That evening, I walked home feeling heavy. My small apartment felt colder than usual. I sat on the couch and stared at the ceiling. Was I wrong? Was I too strict? Should I have said yes more often? The next Monday, a man named Alex came to the branch. He was tall, quiet, and polite. He didn't smile much. He had a laptop and a notebook. He watched everything. He sat in the back corner of my office. He said nothing, just typed. I tried to ignore him, but I could feel his eyes on me. Every meeting felt different. My voice was softer. My hands moved slower. But I didn't change my words. That day, a woman named Paula came to apply for a loan. She wanted to buy a second car. Her husband already had one, but she said she needed her own. I asked if she worked. She said no. I asked how she would pay. She said her husband would help. But I saw the doubt in her eyes. I looked at her closely. "Do you really want this?" I asked. She looked confused. "I just want more freedom," she said. "But I don't know if we can afford it." I leaned forward. There are other ways to find freedom, without adding debt. She looked down. She smiled a little. "Thank you," she said. "No one ever asks me that." She didn't take the loan. She walked out with peace in her eyes. Alex wrote something in his notebook. I didn't know what. I didn't ask. That week I met many people. Some wanted money for school, others for cars, weddings, trips. A few had good reasons. I helped them, but I said no to most. Alex never gave his opinion. He just watched. On Thursday, a familiar face returned. It was Jasmine. She looked different, stronger. She wore a white apron over a clean blue shirt. She smiled wide and held a small paper bag. "I did it," she said. "I finally opened my bakery. It's small, but it's mine." She handed me the bag. "For you." Inside was a small cake with my name on it. My throat felt tight. I looked at her with pride. "You waited. You worked. You earned it," I said. "You didn't need a loan. You needed time." Alex looked up from his laptop. He watched us closely. Jasmine sat for a while. She told me about the bakery, about her early mornings, her tired feet, her first customer, her joy. I listened with a full heart. When she left, the office felt warmer. That evening after work, Alex asked if we could talk. We sat in the break room. He didn't open his laptop. He just looked at me. "You know," he said, "I came here expecting to find a problem. Low approvals, missed targets. But I saw something else." I waited. He continued. "I saw people leaving your office with empty hands, but full hearts. I saw people change their minds. Not because you said no, but because you made them think." I said nothing. He smiled a little. "I used to think loans helped people, but now I see. Sometimes not giving is the real gift." I felt something lift inside me. I had been waiting for someone to understand. "You'll get a good report," he said. "Not because you met numbers, but because you changed lives." The next day, Alex left. He shook my hand and said, "Keep doing what you do." I watched him walk away through the glass door. and I smiled. Weeks passed. Life went on. People kept coming. I kept listening. One afternoon, I stood near the window. The sky was cloudy. A little girl walked past, holding her mother's hand. They were laughing. Simple joy. No loan could buy that. I thought about everyone who sat across my desk. People with dreams, worries, pain. I didn't just give advice. I gave time. I gave honesty. I gave care. Sometimes they didn't like my answers, but later they came back. Not for loans, but for thanks. That was my reward. Not a bonus, not a title, but knowing I helped someone walk away a little lighter. I still work at Chase Bank. I still open the door every morning. I still sit by the window. And I still say the same thing when someone walks in. Tell me your story first, not your numbers. Because sometimes what they need is someone who simply listens. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. More emotional and inspiring stories are coming soon.